today we'll be discussing what would happen to the GTA 5 storyline if Franklin, Trevor, and Lamar all died in the mission Hood Safari. Now, of course, to make this work, we need to have a lot more cops and ballers at the scene at Grove Street, and with that, the unlikely trio wouldn't even make it out of Grove Street to begin with, and get gunned down one by one. Now, what does this lead to for Michael and Lester, the only people left out of the main group alive? Well, first off, sadly, Michael's deal with Devin Weston falls apart because he can't get him those expensive cars on his own, and well, in that case, Devin Weston won't connect Michael with Solomon Richards, which at least now means his family will be safe in the future. So I guess it's a you win some, you lose some type situation. But Michael has literally no one to turn to, even when Martin Madrazo calls him to do a job for him. With this one, he doesn't really want to screw around because he's still a bit scared of Martin, because he is an intimidating guy after all. So he'd have Lester recruit one of his crew members to help Michael out, and with that, the job would go off smoothly without Michael having to go on the run or anything like that. We never do the Polito score or Derailed or Predator. All of those missions are really not necessary here. However, Michael is still getting pressured by Steve and Dave to steal the nerve agent from Humane Labs. So as such, Michael and Lester would have to do something, and so they would decide to go on a series of small robberies all across the West Coast to sort of fund this operation. And this would give us a taste of just what Michael and Lester's robbing days were like in the 3-4 year time span in the late 80s and early 90s prior to them working with Trevor. The big one's obviously off the table, and this also saves Floyd and Deborah because Trevor dies long before Deborah meets him. However, people who wouldn't really be safe are both Ron and Wade. Wade, I imagine, would get kicked out of Floyd's place by Deborah, and sadly Ron and him would one day in Sandy Shores get ambushed by the O'Neills, who would send an anti-tank rocket into Trevor's and Ron's trailer, killing both Wade and Ron instantly. Bury the hatchet never happens, and Michael never has that situation with the Chinese, but as time keeps passing by, he thinks about Franklin and Trevor. In his mind, I imagine that he'd blame Trevor for Franklin's death, mostly, and even though he'd likely never admit it, he misses Trevor as well, because right before his and Franklin's death, they have been sort of reunited, and Trevor didn't really hurt him or his family or didn't do anything crazy to them. So I imagine that Michael would also miss Trevor, at least in some capacity here. He wouldn't have much thinking time though, as he'd still get forced into doing the FIB raid just with a random crew that he can't really trust, but he has no choice. But this also means that he'd have to pick up most of the work for this job, and also that he'd barely make it out of there alive. As for the wrap up, let's say that Merriweather never showed up here, because after the Merriweather heist, Trevor didn't really mess with them anymore because he died, and Michael sure as hell didn't mess with Merriweather at all. All that was Trevor's doing mainly in the original, so Michael still reunites with his family, but he doesn't have issues with Devin Weston either, so that's all cool. Lamar down, of course, never happened since Lamar is dead, and Devin Weston screws over Solomon Richards without anyone being there to stop him. The big one never happens, as Michael wouldn't even be crazy enough to attempt it without Franklin and Trevor, as they were simply far more dependable than anyone Lester could just find. The big one is no joke, considering him and Lester likely got a few million in savings anyway, considering their series of small robberies that they did during the time when Michael was on the run in the original game. They'll probably be fine. And now for the last mission. What happens here? What did I do? So this one involves only one of the bad guys dying, and that's Steve Haynes, and Michael would personally go to the pier and snipe Steve, which would be the end of the game, and most of the bad guys like Devin, the Chinese, and even Stretch would come out on top, and Michael would be okay in the end. He has a bit of money, he has his family, and he likely would from time to time think about Franklin and Trevor, and I imagine that even for the rest of his life, even though he never really finds out the truth and the details about what happened, he'd continue to blame Trevor for everyone's death just because he knows him too well, and that's just kind of how he would rationalize things in his head, which, I mean, if you think about it, he did start shit because he found out that the dude was trying to scam them, and that's how shit got bad. But yeah, Michael would just kind of rationalize things in his head in a way where he blames Trevor for the fact that everyone else died that day. With that said, I want to thank you for watching this video. Leave your thoughts and opinions on this what if in the comments down below. I'm a pretty big fan of this story, not gonna lie, a lot more of a fan than I thought I was going to be originally when I started working on this. But of course, leave your what if suggestions in the comments down below, and if I like them enough, I will be doing them in a future video. Until next video stream, bye bye.